No one notices the one who sweeps the floor. No one asks the name of the woman who arrives before sunrise and only leaves when the last plane rests. She walks in silence with steady steps, like someone who once marched under far greater commands than those she now receives. There's something in her eyes that seems to have seen the sky up close, but no one sees it. The cadets yell, radios crackle nonstop, turbines roar like caged beasts, and she remains there, invisible. She's been shoved, humiliated, ignored, treated like just another shadow clinging to the hangar walls. But what they don't realize is that sometimes silence carries scars that rank can't touch. And within one of those shadows, lives, a past that was buried alive. In a forgotten corner of the base, there's a locked room. Inside, beneath dim light and settled dust, are faded photographs, erased by time and convenience. Uniformed faces once at the center of glory, now scratched, out of history. One of those faces belongs to a black woman, young, her hands firm on the controls of a fighter jet. She doesn't smile, but there's something in her eyes that dares the world to look back. That woman disappeared from the records, and today, she walks unnoticed with a bucket and broom. But the truth never vanishes. It just waits for the right moment to fly again. At that base, a young pilot carries a medal with the picture of a woman he's never known. He's always felt a strange emptiness in his chest, raised with everything the world calls discipline, merit, and pride. But deep inside, there's a question no one has ever been able to answer. And fate, with its cruel and precise hands, has drawn him closer to that answer, without him even realizing it. Every day he crosses paths with a woman who watches him in silence. Every day he feels something he can't quite name. But there are eyes that see far beyond rank. And some encounters, not even the military, can stop. The hangar walls hide more than tools and flight charts. They hide omissions, injustices, erased names. And at the center of it all, a woman who chose to survive without shouting. She doesn't ask for justice, nor does she seek the spotlight. All she wants is the chance to do what she was born to do. Teach, protect, fly, even if now it's with her feet on the ground. She says nothing, but she writes down everything because when the time comes, she'll know exactly what to say. And there's an entire generation about to learn that the greatest strength doesn't come from rank, but from silent dignity. Mistake from the past is about to repeat itself, and only a voice that was once silenced can stop it. But will they listen in time? Or will she have to soar the skies again to prove who she really is? The roar of the turbines won't drown out the truth, nor will the worn uniform hide the weight of her courage. Her story begins on the ground, but it doesn't end there, because even the most wounded wings and still know how to find the right wind. And maybe this time, someone will finally learn how to see. Something is about to be revealed, and what this woman carries could change everything.
But before listening to this exciting story, if you are not yet subscribed to our channel, subscribe now and become part of our community.
The hangar floor trembled beneath the roaring engines of training jets. Miss Gloria Monroe pushed her broom with precise rhythmic movements, like a soldier in formation. Her faded blue uniform looked more like a disguise than a work suit. The tarnished silver wing pinned to her collar shimmered subtly with each step. But no one noticed. Young pilots strutted around, laughing too loud, barking orders like stars on a stage. Gloria moved among them like a shadow, present, yet unseen. One of them, Ethan Walker, the newly arrived golden boy, brushed past her on purpose. Her broom clattered to the ground. "Oops. Didn't see you there, but really who would?" he sneered. Laughter rang out, sharp as a slap. Gloria bent down in silence, picking up the broom without a word, but her fingers clenched tighter than needed. A flicker of memory flashed in her eyes as she stared at Ethan's spotless boots. That arrogant stance, that walk. Something about him felt too familiar. A mechanic barked impatiently. "You gonna sweep all day, or are we flying sometime soon?" She nodded quietly. Bearing humiliation in silence was a ritual she had mastered, but her clenched fist told another story. The weight of being invisible in the place where she once gave orders. From the upper platform, Captain Harris McDowell watched the scene with undisguised contempt. His eyes said it plainly. "People, like you belong beneath us." He didn't need words. Gloria had known that brand of venomous silence her whole life. Around her, framed photos of fallen pilots lined the walls. None had skin as dark as hers. She moved among erased memories, her steps still deliberate. With each sweep, the polished floor gleamed beneath layers of silence. Because she remembered. She remembered the hum of engines when her voice once filled the radio tower. She remembered the insignia, the respect, and all that was stolen. She paused by the memorial wall honoring lost pilots. One name made her chest tighten. It marked the mission that ended her career, buried under falsified reports. Only she knew the full truth. But silence had been her only way to survive. Across the hangar, Ethan was training, oblivious to the invisible thread tying them. He moved confidently, fast, relying on instincts. But there was something hollow in his eyes, a void even he couldn't name. Gloria stared at him, and in that moment she saw what no one else did. The same chin line, the same searching gaze. During a break, Ethan passed by again. He threw a smirk and muttered to a friend, "This place is crawling with ghosts." Gloria heard, but didn't react. Her faith never shouted, it whispered. She carried a small wooden cross in her apron pocket. Every night she prayed softly, not for justice, but for direction. Life had taught her that answers didn't come through noise, but through time. And in that hangar where spinning blades sliced the air like razors, she felt a shift in the winds. She didn't know what, but she knew how to read the sky. And something unseen had changed its course. Back in the janitor's closet, Gloria leaned her broom near a stack of technical manuals. She ran her fingers across her brooch with care. Old silver wings, tarnished but intact. It was all that remained, of the past they'd tried to erase. She didn't speak of it, only with God, and the memories. Alone, she pulled out a hidden notebook and scribbled, "Ethan Walker, identical eyes, sarcastic tone, likely fear." That was how she handled pain, by observing, writing, waiting, because her time would come, and she would not let the truth die in silence. The pilots cleared the hangar, laughter fading. Ethan was the last to leave, flipping a coin and humming under his breath. Gloria remained, sweeping in slow circles, like sanctifying the ground with each pass. When she finally turned off the lights, she looked up and whispered, "Another day, Lord. Keep me steady." In the dark, her eyes glimmered with something between longing and purpose. Her name badge no longer read captain, but she still carried her mission, to stand upright whole in the storm. And when she closed the door, only one sound echoed among the jets, the soft beat of forgotten wings. But that night, the hangar's silence hid something else, because a buried truth was stirring, and it all began with a name no one had dared speak in 2 decades, Captain Monroe. Midnight cloaked the hangar in steel and wind. Most had gone home, but Gloria walked with determined steps toward the far end of the building. An old keyring hung from her waist, like part of a forgotten uniform. Each step echoed between metal, walls, and buried memories. She stopped in front of a gray door, its paint peeling, its lock rusted. She turned the key gently, as if waking something that was never meant to rise again. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden world, a shrine of silence. Inside, a single dangling light bulb cast shadows over taped-up old photos. It was the only place where she was still called by the name they tried to erase. Captain Monroe. She stepped inside and locked the door behind her. The scent of old paper and burnt oil lingered like an old comrade. Her hands, now worn from scrubbing floors, still remembered flying in the dark. She moved toward a wall where a photo showed her, in full uniform, saluting with pride. Below it read, Operation Silent Thunder, Command CPTG Monroe. She touched the glass gently. The memory of the sabotage hit like a punch to the chest. Closing her eyes, she whispered, "They thought a stamp could erase the truth." On the table rested an old notebook marked with a faded cross. Inside, clippings, flight logs, and a single wrinkled photo of a newborn baby with wide, uncertain eyes. Heavy footsteps shattered the silence. Gloria turned off the light by instinct and froze. The doorknob rattled violently and Captain Harris's voice sliced through the dark. "Someone in there?" Her heart pounded, but she remained still. The door flew open. Hallway light revealed Harris's face and twisted in suspicion. He scanned the room, the photos, the notebook, and then her. "What are you doing here, janitor? This ain't no museum for old war stories." She held the baby photo tight in her palm. Harris stepped forward. "You snooping around where you don't belong?" His threat was cold, surgical. She raised her eyes but said nothing. Her silence spoke louder than any excuse. He leaned in closer and hissed, "Try this again, and I'll throw you out without warning." She nodded once, swallowing rage like molten steel. He left, and the room fell back into stillness. Gloria pressed her back to the door, catching her breath. Tears welled up but didn't fall. They stood guard in her eyes. The baby photo, though creased, was intact. She clutched it to her chest and whispered, "You're still out there. I haven't forgotten you." Outside, Harris strutted away, convinced he'd won again. He didn't realize what fueled Gloria wasn't a uniform. It was a quiet promise of reunion. Inside, she sat on a metal chair and opened her old Bible. Between its pages, tucked clippings about unexplained incidents, expelled cadets, and a scrap of blue cloth, a child's uniform. She didn't keep them for nostalgia. She kept them for justice. Her faith didn't scream revenge, it whispered patience, and in that waiting she had grown stronger. Truth, when ready, doesn't beg to be seen. It simply stands for those brave enough to look. Before leaving, Gloria knelt beside a rusted toolbox in the corner. She pulled out an oval locket wrapped in cloth. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside, the blurry photo of a baby, and a name handwritten beneath, Ethan, 3 weeks. She barely breathed. Her tear-filled eyes reflected the flickering light. It was the only gift she had left him before they took him away. A nurse's whisper, a switched file, and silence that screamed. She kissed the locket, shut it, and slipped it into her pocket. "If it's really him, God, prepare me," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but steady. She turned off the light and locked the door. The hallway lay in silence, but something within her had stirred. Memory was no longer a weight. It was a map, and each step led her closer to what she had never dared name. The cold sliced through the metal corridors like a blade across old scars. But she did not shiver. She was solid. Her footsteps echoed like muffled war drums. Outside, under a sky of stars, she whispered, "There are still wings in me, even if they can't see them." And in that quiet moment, Miss Gloria Monroe was no longer just a janitor. She was a mother, a veteran, and a storm contained. The next morning, no one would know what had taken place in that forgotten room, but something in Gloria's eyes would be different. She'd walk the halls with the same broom, the same silence, but a different breath. Because now the past wasn't just pain. It was her weapon. And in that hangar full of shouted orders, she would keep speaking with her eyes until someone finally dared to see. The sun hadn't yet broken the horizon when Gloria stepped into the hangar, already dressed in her worn blue uniform. She carried a trash bag in one hand and a cleaning cloth in the other, banners in a silent war. The cold floor reflected the first beams of artificial light, and the ventilation system hummed like tired breath. As she cleaned an oil spill near the taxi strip, hurried footsteps echoed behind her. Captain Harris appeared, angry about something that hadn't even happened yet. "You planning to finish this floor today or painting a masterpiece?" barked for everyone to hear. A few mechanics paused to watch. Gloria remained crouched, saying nothing. Her knee cracked as she stood, but she showed no pain. Just the calm, steady stare of someone who had once commanded far more than expected now. Moments later, she spotted a small leak on the side of one of the training jets. Water or fuel? It wasn't clear. Calmly, she approached Ethan, who was adjusting sensors beneath the wing. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but I think..." Before she finished, he turned with mockery. You think? You think what, janitor?" He laughed, turning to the others. "What's next? Gonna tell me how to align a wing flap too?" Laughter erupted around them. Gloria lowered her eyes, gripping her cloth tight. "Just thought I should warn," she muttered. "Don't need your warnings. We know planes, you know mops and buckets," Ethan snapped. She stepped back in silence, but something inside her didn't. She kept working without raising her head, but every word etched itself like a fresh scar. After training, when the hangar cleared, she returned to the leak and examined it again. Quietly, she pulled a small notebook from her pocket and wrote, "Possible valve drain failure, aircraft 07, tested by Ethan." It was how she ordered. Her world. Observing, recording, waiting. To others, she was just a stubborn janitor. To herself, she was the invisible guardian of all that still mattered. Because those who've lost everything know, truth isn't shouted. It's preserved. In the break room, 2 soldiers whispered about her. "That old woman creeps around corners, always watching. She gives me chills, like she sees everything." Ethan heard it all, indifferent on the outside, but he couldn't explain why she unsettled him so deeply. Just a janitor, but her presence felt challenging, like she carried a kind of pain he couldn't decode. He stood up and stormed out, brushing past her in the hall. Gloria averted her eyes, but inside, pressure was mounting. The kind of tension military order tries to bury, but the soul always senses. Later, she was summoned to Harris's office. The room was cold, with steel furniture and walls lined with awards. "Word is, you've been snooping where you don't belong. You know what that means, don't you?" he said, twirling his pen slowly. Gloria stood silently. "You had your time here. Now you're just background furniture. Don't try to take center stage again." She nodded once. Not in agreement, but because arguing with undeserved power is like yelling at the wind. When she left the room, her shoulders were heavier, but her steps still steady. That night at home, she opened her notebook and wrote down every word, line by line, as if writing kept her dignity intact. From the drawer, she pulled an old envelope stamped, "Denied inquiry, U.S. Air Force, confidential." Inside, the altered mission report. She folded it again carefully and tucked it into her Bible. "You'll come into the light," she whispered. It wasn't a curse. It was a quiet vow to truth. Her faith didn't perform. It endured, surviving, without an audience. Next day, Gloria returned to the hangar. The invisible scar from yesterday didn't change her stance. She began polishing the floor around the jets with her usual precision. Ethan passed by and muttered, "Watch, you don't slip on your own ego, cleaning lady." She didn't answer, just gave a faint smile, the kind only someone who's lost everything can give, and kept working. But looking at him again, a thought refused to leave. "Why do you seem so familiar, boy?" It was as if time was drawing a path back, and she didn't know if she was ready for where it would lead. But before the shift ended, something unexpected would happen. A sergeant would leave a technical report on a table, and Gloria's eyes couldn't resist reading. Inside, between numbers and coded names, there was something, a detail that could change everything. But touching that paper would be like lighting a match in a gasoline storm, and even knowing that, she stepped closer. It was just another paper left on the table. But for Gloria, technical reports were never just paper. That morning, the hangar was quieter than usual. The sergeant had left the document near the toolbox before rushing to take a call. Gloria swept, nearby, her eyes alert and her footsteps soft like a prayer. When she saw the desk unattended, she casually approached. The report was open and a name jumped out. Walker E. Simulation Operation V12. Her breath caught. That code name matched a project she worked on decades ago, one abruptly shut down after a mysterious leak. Coincidence? Maybe. But to someone erased over a so-called coincidence, nothing was simple. Gloria read each line like it was a message from fate. Among sensor data and flight metrics was a hand-drawn chart. The handwriting, hers. But it made no sense. The report dated back to 1999, the same year she was forced out. She thought all those records had been destroyed. Her name wasn't anywhere, but there was her signature mark, a double arrow notation for progressive failure. A chill ran down her spine. It was like staring into a mirror everyone else swore didn't exist. She touched the paper with her fingertips, as if the past itself had found her in silence. Suddenly, someone coughed loudly behind her. Gloria froze. She turned slowly, the sergeant. He crossed his arms. "Looking for something, janitor?" The tone wasn't curious, it was accusing. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. He grabbed the report from her hands and shouted down the hall, "Captain Harris, we've got a situation here." The call echoed like a siren. Gloria stood frozen, eyes fixed on the floor. She knew what was coming. She'd lived it before, and still, part of her felt she had to read it, even if it cost her everything again. Harris stormed in, thunder in uniform. One look, Gloria by the table, the report in the sergeant's hands, was all he needed. Caught reading classified materials? That's a direct protocol breach. Grounds for immediate termination. He didn't ask for her version. Gloria tried to respond, but he shut her down with a hand. "You had your time. Now you want to pretend you're a flight tech? Where does this end?" Ethan, passing by, heard the commotion and stepped closer. He saw Gloria being publicly humiliated. She didn't meet anyone's gaze, just gripped the table's edge like it was the only thing holding her up. Harris ordered her removed from the base. Immediately. And if she sets foot here again, she's trespassing. Ethan interjected, "Isn't that a bit extreme?" Harris turned surprised. "Defending janitors now, cadet?" Ethan hesitated. "I just think maybe there was a misunderstanding." Gloria stopped him with a look and a whisper. "Don't speak for me." It was the first time she'd raised her voice. Soft, steady, decades deep. Ethan stepped back, confused. Harris smirked. 2 guards escorted her toward the gate. She didn't resist. She walked like she always did, upright, silent, holding the weight of truth in her pocket. In the locker room, she was allowed to gather her things. Everything fit into a simple cloth bag. As she packed, Ethan appeared at the door, his expression mixed confusion and unease. "Why were you reading that report?" She didn't answer right away, just placed the silver wing brooch inside, alongside her Bible and notebook. "You wouldn't understand," Ethan insisted. "You look at me like you know something about me." She zipped the bag and turned slowly. "Maybe I do," and walked out, leaving behind air thick with questions. One echoed loudest in Ethan's mind. Why does she feel so close? Outside, the wind had picked up. Gloria paused before crossing the gate. She turned to look back, not with regret, but with remembrance. She didn't cry, but her eyes said everything. They buried her history here once, and now they wanted to do it again. But something was different. This time she wasn't leaving empty-handed. She had proof. She had patterns. She had the truth rising from the ground. And a boy with eyes she'd never forgotten. As the gate shut behind her, the base resumed as usual. Pilots launched, orders were shouted, but something had shifted. Ethan remained still, staring at the path she walked, and for the first time, he wondered if maybe he'd just seen a glimpse of the past and never realized it was his own. The sky that afternoon felt heavy, even without clouds. The airbase operated as usual, but a strange tension hung thick, like something was about to break loose. Ethan Walker prepared for a routine test flight in the same aircraft that had leaked days before. Captain Harris had ordered the launch, declaring everything was within protocol. Ethan hesitated, but he'd been taught never to question orders. Meanwhile, Gloria sat on a wooden bench outside the base, just beyond the fence. She hadn't returned out of defiance, but from intuition. The silver wing brooch rested in her pocket, and something in the wind whispered, "Be ready." The jet took off smoothly, cutting through the air with elegance and force. But 5 minutes, and Ethan's voice crackled through the radio, tinged with fear. "Control, I'm feeling instability. Warning lights flashing, pressure fluctuating." The control tower stayed silent. Harris was gone, pulled into a meeting. A cadet, on duty, panicked, too green to respond. Ethan tried again. "Control, I need confirmation. I'm losing sensor readouts." Static. From outside, Gloria stood up, eyes locked on the sky. She felt the wind shift, old instincts tingling beneath her skin. Without hesitation, she moved toward the gate, urgency in her steps. At the entrance, the guard recognized her instantly. "Miss Monroe, you're not authorized anymore." She raised her voice, first time in years. "There's a pilot in the air with failing systems. I can bring him back." The guard paused. Her stance wasn't desperate, but it was commanding. She wasn't begging. She was declaring, "Please, if he crashes and I wasn't allowed in, that's on you." The guard radioed for clearance, but didn't wait. He opened the gate. "Go." Gloria dashed forward. Each step reconnected her to who she had once been. And within her, decades of pain shifted into purpose. She burst into the control room uninvited. Cadets turned, startled. One tried to stop her, too late. The headset was already on her ear. "Lieutenant Walker, this is Tower. Do you read me?" Ethan's voice came through, relieved. "Finally, who's there?" She took a breath. "Someone who knows that aircraft better than any engineer in this building." Silence. Then, "If you can hear me, trust my voice. I'm with you." Ethan hesitated. There was something about her voice ain't familiar. "Copy," he said. Gloria scanned the monitors with trained eyes. She found the anomaly, adjusted the data feed, and gave crisp instructions. "Level the nose. Reduce power slowly. Use the side wind. You'll feel shaking. It's expected." The room was dead silent. Everyone listened as this ordinary woman issued commands with the precision of someone who had saved lives. In deserts, in clouds, in chaos. Ethan stabilized. "It's working, God, it's working." Gloria didn't smile. She stayed focused, breathing steady. "Keep calm, pilot, I'm here." He bit his lip, sweating. "Who are you?" She paused. Someone forgotten, but still flying. From behind the glass, senior officers began whispering. "That voice, isn't that—" No one moved. Time froze. Until Ethan shouted, "I'm coming back. Tell them I'm landing." Gloria rushed to the tower balcony. The jet appeared on the horizon, shaky but aligned. She narrowed her eyes, calculating. "Lower it more. There. Trust me." Ethan obeyed without hesitation. The tires hit the runway hard, but no explosion followed. The jet skidded, then stopped. Silence broke into applause. But Gloria simply exhaled. She knew it wasn't over. There were questions hanging, and a boy down there removing his helmet with trembling hands, who needed to know why that voice made him feel at home. She handed the headset to a cadet and left without another word. In the hall, eyes followed her, not as a janitor, as someone who commanded respect. From across the hangar, Ethan saw her. He wanted to run, to ask who she was, what just happened. But he couldn't. Something in his chest tightened, as if his soul recognized what his mind had yet to understand. Gloria, calm and composed, returned to the edge of the runway, and she thought, I can't be invisible anymore. But is he ready to see? The hangar lights flickered as Gloria walked down the empty corridor. Her face calm, but her breathing had changed. Each step now marked a return. In the radio room, chatter about the emergency landing still echoed. Ethan was being examined by medical staff. Engineers scrambled to review the flight logs, but Gloria headed the other way, a forgotten hallway behind the old maintenance room, lockers filled with ghosts. She unlocked one with a key she hadn't used in years. Inside, her old uniform, aged but perfectly folded, still waiting, like memory wrapped in cloth. She picked it up with care and stood still, breathing in what had been lost. Outside, the sky darkened. Inside, tension thickened. Harris barked orders in frustration. Find out who let that woman in. Cadets exchanged uneasy glances. Some knew. Others suspected. No one spoke. In the infirmary, Ethan sat, helmet in hand. He'd been cleared to leave, but couldn't. His mind spun with questions. That voice from the tower, strong, steady, but maternal, like it had lived inside him all along. He stood abruptly. I need to know who she is, he said to a sergeant, and left. Gloria now wore her uniform beneath her janitor's suit. Not for pride, for memory. The weight was emotional, not physical. She walked the corridors with her zipper undone, just enough to reveal the faded Air Force crest. Some staff stared. An older technician gasped. Captain Monroe, he whispered. She didn't reply. Her eyes said enough. In silence, she entered the simulator room. She needed to see Ethan's recent training logs, needed to know if what she feared was real. Meanwhile, Ethan searched the base, asking for the woman from the tower. Some laughed, others avoided. Him. A mechanic pointed. Think she went that way. Ethan followed, turned a corner, froze. Gloria stood with her back to him, studying a dusty monitor. Pale light cast her silhouette, and the silver crest on her chest. He held his breath. Who are you? He asked, his voice both firm and trembling. Gloria turned slowly. Their eyes met, and in that second, time stopped. She didn't answer, right away, just stared, long, deep, as if seeing him for the first time, and also as if she'd always known him. Why are you wearing that uniform? He asked again. Gloria looked down briefly, then replied, wearing what should have never been taken. Her voice calm, without bitterness. Ethan stepped closer. You saved my life today. She nodded. And I'd do it again. Silence wrapped them. He looked at her chest, then at his own insignia. My last name's Walker, he said, offering a puzzle piece. Gloria didn't speak, but something in her changed. Not yet. Not here. There was more. But the ground beneath them had started to shift. Harris arrived suddenly with 2 soldiers. What's going on here? He barked. He saw Gloria in uniform, beside Ethan. His face went pale. You weren't authorized to return. Gloria turned with a calm sharper than any shout. I wasn't authorized, but I was obligated. Harris stepped forward. Ethan blocked him. She saved my life, sir. Alone. when no one else was here. Silence filled the room. Harris glanced around. Everyone knew, even if they said nothing. His authority began to crumble, and Gloria stood still. No shouting, no retreat, just posture and truth. She turned to leave, then looked back at Ethan. Some things can't be said in a hallway. He nodded. Can I see you later? She hesitated, then said, in the hangar's shadow, after the engine stop. Ethan smiled, his first that day, and watched her walk away. Harris tried to protest, but his voice no longer carried weight. Because that day someone had reminded the base what honor looked like. And not even silence could erase what had just begun. But before night truly fell, something else would surface. A veteran engineer would open a forgotten cabinet. Inside, a sealed dossier. The name on the front, Captain Gloria Monroe. And it would hold more than records. It would hold answers no one wanted revealed. And a truth long buried in darkness would begin to rise. The hangar was bathed in a blue morning haze, and the wind seemed to carry secrets through the base's steel bones. Gloria walked alone, silent, her footsteps steady like a practiced ritual. She stopped in front of the fallen hero's wall, where names engraved on cold steel caught the pale light. Her fingers grazed one of the plates, trembling slightly as if touching living skin. She closed her eyes, absorbing the weight of one who had survived where others had fallen. In her pocket, she clenched the old wing brooch like a sacred relic. She knew something else was waiting to surface. She could feel the scent of long-buried justice in the air. And on that day, something hidden would begin to rise from the dark. An old engineer approached her quietly, his hair gray, his gaze heavy. In his hands he held a thick envelope, aged and sealed with brittle yellowing tape. He stood beside Gloria and extended it without a word. She took it with solemn hands, already knowing the weight wasn't paper. It was history. Breaking the seal released more than air. It cracked memory open. Inside were reports, photographs, scribbled notes, and flight logs. All had her name erased except one. A handwritten memo labeled, Urgent Review, Manipulated Failures in Operation V-12. Her throat tightened. It was proof. Someone had buried her. On purpose. As she read through the contents, Captain Harris stormed into the hangar with two officers. His barking voice and quick steps betrayed more fear than fury. What's going on here? Who authorized this? He shouted, trying to assert control. The engineer stepped forward. Captain, we uncovered files from the sabotaged operation. They need to be reviewed. Harris lunged for the envelope, but Gloria clutched it tight. You knew. All along. He froze, then scoffed. This proves nothing. These are outdated scraps. But sweat beaded down his temple, and everyone saw it. Ethan entered from the other side of the hangar, drawn by the noise. He stopped when he saw Gloria holding the file, and Harris visibly shaken. Does this have anything to do with the failure in my flight? He asked. Gloria looked at him, eyes wet but focused. Yes? And everything that happened before you were born. Her words hit like a storm cloud dropping. Ethan didn't fully understand, but his gut twisted. Harris interjected, Don't listen to her, she was dishonorably discharged for misconduct. But his voice lacked the same command. Everyone was listening now, not to him. Gloria inhaled deeply and opened the file for all to see. She pulled out a photo of herself in full flight gear, standing beside a jet marked with the base's emblem. She also held a page, a forced discharge order signed by Harris and two others. They chose to erase me instead of owning their mistakes, but I never forgot who I was. Her voice was low, calm, but cut like thunder. The engineer nodded. Ethan swallowed hard, trying to make sense of it all. Why do you know so much about me? Why do you look at me like that? He asked. Gloria paused, her eyes locked onto his as if asking permission to speak. Because the world lied to me, and it lied to you too. Ethan stepped closer, the truth so near it ached. He began, but Gloria stopped him with a quiet gesture. Not yet. Not here. Harris rushed forward, but two soldiers stood in his path, silent, immovable. His authority crumbled like rusted metal. The hangar itself seemed to exhale. Something unspoken had shifted. More senior officers began to gather, drawn by the tension. One of them squinted at Gloria and whispered, "Captain Monroe?" She nodded gently. "Still standing," she replied. The officer touched his cap in respect. "We never forgot Kandahar." And just like that, rumor became fact. The stares around her changed. They no longer saw a janitor. They saw someone who had been erased and had returned without bitterness, still upright. Ethan looked around, sensing that his life was about to change forever. But before the final truth came to light, Gloria tucked the files back into the envelope. "There's still one name missing from all this, and it's buried in the military birth registry." Ethan's eyes widened. Gloria smiled, soft and steady. "Meet me at my place after shift." She turned and walked away, her words echoing like a departing jet. Everyone understood. The truth was preparing to land. But the impact it would bring was still on approach. Inside the base's administrative center, the ceiling fans spun with a heavy, tired rhythm, as if weary from witnessing decades of silence. On the conference table, old documents, flight logs, and faded reports lay spread out. 3 senior officers reviewed the contents found by the veteran engineer, their expressions shifting between disbelief and quiet shame. These were marked as operational accidents, but the data shows deliberate mechanical failures. One whispered. At the center of the stack sat a report signed by Harris, Gloria's signature forged beneath his. The atmosphere crackled with unease. For the first time in years, whispers began to circulate the name long forbidden, Captain Monroe. And with her name came the wound, still open, still raw. Meanwhile, Gloria walked through the outer corridors of the hangar, steady and composed. Tension buzzed around her, but her expression was calm, almost maternal. Soldiers who once ignored her now turned to look. She held the envelope like a flag moving with purpose. In her mind, old scenes replayed. The day she was dismissed, the sound of a slamming door, Harris's cold words, "Better disappear now than drag this further." But she hadn't disappeared. She had chosen silence as armor, and now, under the same roof that tried to erase her, she walked tall, not for revenge, but as living testimony that truth has its own kind of memory. In the instruction room, Ethan pored over his own flight logs, searching for patterns. He compared simulation curves, scanned code anomalies. Something felt off, but not obviously wrong. Then he found it. An embedded digital signature, a training code used only in 1999. He isolated the string and found the initials, GM. His heart raced. That simulation wasn't built for him. It was built by her. And suddenly everything made sense. The maneuvers he flew by instinct. The commands that felt inherited. He hadn't just been trained. He was part of a legacy. Harris, learning that a formal review board had been convened, panicked. He locked himself in his office, frantically trying to delete files from the system, but it was too late. The veteran engineer and a team of young cadets had already made digital copies. "It's over, Captain," said one of the IT techs, eyes unflinching. Harris slammed his fists against the desk. She was just a janitor, a woman who wanted to be seen. But deep down, he knew. The name Gloria Monroe was spreading like fire on dry paper. Even those who once turned away now spoke it with respect. Miss Monroe, the woman who came back from silence. Ethan made his way to Gloria's home, just outside the base. He carried the flight report marked with her, hidden code, and a storm of questions. The sky was overcast, the wind thick with memory. Her house was small, wooden, with a tidy garden and a wooden cross above the door. He knocked twice. She opened it slowly. No words, just a warm, knowing smile. He stepped inside. The space was humble but filled with details. Old photographs, medals tucked into wooden boxes, newspaper clippings folded inside her Bible, and a silence that felt like a sanctuary. Gloria motioned for him to sit. She set down 2 cups on the table. Hibiscus tea, she offered, a piece of her soul in a cup. Ethan slid the report across to her, pointing at the embedded code. That was you, wasn't it? She nodded. I knew someone would find it eventually. He exhaled. Why leave the trail? Gloria looked out the window as if answering the wind. Because every truth needs a witness, even if it takes 20 years to see it. Ethan clutched the teacup in his hands. I think I'm starting to see. She smiled. It's not when you see, it's what you do after that. Outside, a few neighbors peeked through their windows. A young pilot in the home of an old janitor, it stirred whispers. But no one judged. There was something sacred in the moment, one generation listening to another without uniform, without rank. Ethan, eyes glassy, lifted his gaze. You've seen me fly. Now I want to see you speak. I want to hear it all, from the beginning. Gloria held his eyes as if finally receiving permission to open the door to her buried past. Then listen with your heart, because my story began the day they told me I couldn't be a mother, or a pilot, and I chose to be both. But before she could begin, a loud knock struck the door. Ethan stood quickly, heart pounding. Gloria didn't flinch. She simply clutched the brooch on her chest. At the door stood 2 base officers, their faces tense. Miss Monroe, you're requested to appear before the review board. They want to hear your statement, officially. Gloria nodded. She picked up the envelope, lifted her chin, and replied, Then let's finish what they started. Ethan followed her, because now, nothing would be hidden again, and the world was finally ready to hear what had been silenced for far too long. The council chamber was full. Senior officers, military psychologists, engineers, and Air Force representatives filled the semicircular seats. At the center stood a lone table, lit by a hanging lamp that cast long, dramatic shadows across the documents. Gloria entered with firm steps, wearing her old flight uniform, carefully restored. The silver wing brooch on her chest gleamed like a quiet scar. Ethan sat at the back of the room, tense, eyes fixed on her. Harris, beside his lawyer, held his jaw tight, his posture rigid, fear leaking through every motion. The chairman opened the session. Miss Monroe, are you here to testify about Operation V-12 and its aftermath? She nodded. Her voice was calm. I'm here to speak what no one ever wanted to hear. She opened the envelope, laid out the documents, each movement, precise military. She handed the board proof of sabotage, forged signatures, and orders written behind her back. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out the locket. She held it for a moment, as if holding an entire lifetime in her palm. Before I continue, there's something I need to show. She stood, walked to the front table, and gently placed the open locket on top of the reports. This was the only piece of my son they let me keep. They told me he died at birth. That was a lie. He was taken from me, given to another family. The room went utterly still. Ethan froze in his seat. One of the officers picked up the locket. Inside, a blurry photo of a newborn, wide-eyed and fragile. On the back, handwritten, Ethan, 3 weeks. The chairman cleared his throat, stunned. Are you saying Lieutenant Ethan Walker is your son? Gloria didn't answer. She simply turned and looked at Ethan. Her eyes said everything. Time collapsed. Ethan stood without realizing it, his hands shaking, his eyes welled. He walked to the center of the room, unchallenged. "That's why your voice made me feel safe," he said, voice cracking. Gloria smiled gently. "Because you've always been home." Harris leapt up, furious. This is theater, a cheap stunt to manipulate emotions. But no one listened anymore. The officers had risen from their seats. One whispered, "That's why she never left. She was waiting for this moment." The old engineer stepped forward, placing a hand on Gloria's shoulder. "It's an honor to see you standing, Captain." Ethan turned to Harris. "You took my mother from me, stole the right to know her, and still had the nerve to call her invisible." Harris moved toward the door, but two soldiers blocked his path. The board ordered a criminal investigation. The wall of silence had crumbled. Gloria returned to her seat, but she was no longer just a survivor. She was a lighthouse. Ethan sat beside her. For the first time, he took her hand. "Do you forgive me for not seeing it sooner?" he whispered. She squeezed his hand gently. "You weren't the one who needed to see, the world was." An officer stepped forward and read aloud, "The United States Air Force acknowledges severe errors in the handling of Operation V-12 and the wrongful dismissal of Captain Monroe." A quiet murmur swept the room. The truth had finally landed. But Gloria knew. Her mission wasn't over. After the session, they walked out together. The sun was setting, bathing the runway in gold and fire. They stopped at the edge of the tarmac, where it all began. Gloria looked at the row of grounded jets. "You know, son, some people are born to fly. Others are born to lift those who've fallen." Ethan turned to her, tears in his eyes. "You did both." She smiled. "But the hardest thing I ever did was stay standing on the ground." He embraced her tightly, as if trying to collect every lost year in one gesture. In that embrace, two lives met. One that had been stolen, and one just beginning. But just as they thought the story had ended, Gloria's phone rang, a military number. The voice on the line was steady. "Captain Monroe, there's something else you need to see. We found a name in the military birth registry, and it doesn't match any official adoption records." Gloria glanced at Ethan, her face stiffened. "What does that mean?" The voice answered, "It means there may be another truth buried, and maybe someone else is looking for you." She hung up slowly. The silence returned. But this time, it was full of revelation, and once again the past was knocking on her door. Days after the hearing, the hangar hosted a quiet yet deeply meaningful ceremony. No military band, no long speeches, just a circle of chairs, a few rows of officers, and a table draped in dark blue cloth. At the center, a wooden box bearing the Air Force emblem. Gloria entered with Ethan beside her, wearing her restored uniform, shoes polished to mirror the setting sun. Her eyes were calm, but her jaw carried the firmness of someone finally heard. The cadet stepped aside. The silence, respectful, spoke louder than any trumpet. The base commander stood up and said few words. "Today, we are not awarding a medal. We are making something right." He lifted the box lid, revealing a new insignia gleaming under the hangar lights. This wasn't a typical medal. It was a golden replica of Gloria's old wing pin, now renewed with an inscription on the back, "For the one who flew through darkness and still found the way." When she received it, Gloria didn't cry. She simply placed a hand over her, heart closed her eyes and whispered a prayer only she could hear. Ethan, standing beside her, held his helmet in both hands. For the first time in his life, he felt whole. The base, once indifferent, now stood still in the presence of a woman who had been erased but never defeated. After the ceremony, Gloria didn't return to her cleaning job, nor did she resume active flying duty. Instead, she chose something quieter but maybe even more powerful. She began training new cadets in private sessions far from the spotlight, close to the soul. "Here, we learn not to fall," she would say. Her lessons weren't on any official schedule, but those who trained with her never forgot. Ethan changed too. He requested a transfer to the Humanitarian Missions Division and began studying military psychology. "I want to understand what breaks a soul and how to rebuild it," he told the commander. Because now, he carried a new mission: to honor the name he almost lost. Gloria's once quiet home became a place of gathering. Young cadets came to hear her stories. Neighbors brought cakes, coffee, and gratitude. A new bench was added to the backyard. There she sat every afternoon to write in her brown notebook. Not memories, but letters, some to herself, others too. The unanswered places. Ethan read some aloud. "Son, I never stopped searching for you, but I had to disappear to survive. Now that you've found me, I've learned to breathe again." The letters became part of their rhythm, and even though they were never mailed, the world felt lighter. One evening, while watering her garden, Ethan appeared with an envelope. It was from the Military Records Department. She opened it slowly. Inside, a form titled Voluntary Family Connection Recognition. Ethan offered her a pen. "I want to carry your name," he said. She smiled, eyes brimming. "Son, you've carried my heart from the start." Still, she signed, in firm handwriting, beneath the name Gloria Monroe, and for the first time, in years her chest no longer held absence. It held presence. The next morning, while making coffee, she heard a soft knock at the door. It was a young woman in civilian uniform, her hair tied back, eyes steady, carrying a folder. "Are you Gloria Monroe?" she asked. "I am." The girl took a breath. "I think I'm your niece. My mother always spoke of a sister who disappeared from the system, and I found you." Gloria stood silent, her knees weakened, but she smiled. "Then come in. There's still hot coffee and stories waiting to be told." The girl stepped in. Ethan watched from the kitchen, and something inside him knew. That sound was the sound of redeemed wings opening again. That afternoon, Gloria and Ethan walked to the field beside the base. They carried with them a small wooden model of a plane. They buried it there, as a symbol of everything they had overcome. "This isn't an ending," she said. "It's fertile ground." The wind blew strong, bending the grass in reverence. Gloria closed her eyes and listened, not with ears, but with her soul. The sound of invisible wings crossing the sky. Maybe they were memories, maybe prayers, but she knew. It was the sound of redemption, the sound of someone forgotten, who chose to keep loving anyway. And on the horizon, there was still one last flight, one final document awaiting a signature, and a new mission already rising in quiet. There are stories that were never told, yet they upheld the dignity of entire generations. Miss Gloria Monroe didn't want applause. She just wanted to be seen for who she truly was. Her silence wasn't weakness. It was strength held back, waiting for the right moment. When the truth came to light, it wasn't shouted. It was whispered with the weight of survival. And in that embrace with her long-lost son, everything that once went unnamed finally made sense. Gloria didn't recover the time she lost, but she turned what was left of it into legacy. And now every step inside that hangar carries a story no one will dare erase again. What makes us invisible to the world? The color of our skin, our quietness, the wounds we choose not to show. Gloria was cast aside by a system that claimed to protect, but chose to conceal. She faced humiliation every day and still kept sweeping the very floor she once helped build. And you? Have you ever stopped to wonder how many people around you carry untold stories? How often does prejudice speak louder than compassion? How many injustices are still buried beneath the excuse of rank and order? There is a pain that only silent dignity can carry. And that dignity is what taught a son how to truly fly. Redemption didn't come through medals or courtrooms. It came through Ethan's eyes when he realized who had been beside him all along. It came through Gloria's choice to teach again, not through rank, but through soul. It came when others started calling her captain, not by protocol but by respect. And all of it happened because she believed that truth one day would find its way. Would you have that same courage to keep going, even without recognition? Or would you let your wings rust in the shadows? Her faith didn't scream. It simply held her steady. And that's why, in the end, she won. Miss Gloria Munro's story isn't just about justice. It's about legacy, about what we leave behind even when the world tries to erase us. It's about the power of not giving up on yourself, about continuing to clean up the wreckage while waiting for the right moment to rebuild. And when she chose not to return to the skies but to stay on the ground, it was so she could lift others, so that no young pilot would ever forget that real strength isn't measured in rank. It's measured in conviction. And sometimes the true heroes are the ones silently sweeping the floor beside us, just waiting for us to learn how to see. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel, turn on the bell, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because some people hold the world up in silence. And today, it's time we listen.